And welcome back to the weekly zoo. I guess I said I'd be back at 11, maybe 10:30, but I only took like a 2, 3, 4 minute, maybe even a 5 minute nap. And apparently I was recording. I was apparently recording on the replay here, but that's okay. I'll fix that in post. Yes, we were on replay for about 20 minutes, roughly. Alright, so we're going to go into what, we're just going to call this the Purple Pill Hour. This is, the show where we talk about relationships, the politicization of relationships, the ever so challenging world of relationships here on the Purple Pill. There's so many things to get around here, and I think doing the Purple, we'll call this the episode 4 of this podcast. And I want to get to this cut to the chase right here and play a few minutes of cuts from the Young Turks, where they do they play some video from the Daily Weirdo. Let's play that right now. Let me open up my channels on here. Let's play it up.
No-fault divorce is very, very bad.
I think the reform to no-fault divorce is far simpler. It should be reformed by simply ceasing to exist. Marriage is much more than a contract. It's a covenant.
There are a lot of problems with the current legal structure of marriage. I agree with that critique of the current legal structure of marriage. No-fault divorce is one of the worst things that ever happened to Western civilization.
I think she's entitled to nothing during these proceedings. And I think the problem is no-fault divorce.
I still believe that children need a mom and a dad and that divorce is horrible. But in today's legal system, my beliefs don't matter.
We gotta get rid of no-fault divorce.
Well, Tim Pool, you might be getting your wish, because there are Republican lawmakers who are literally working on that type of policy as we speak. So conservative lawmakers in multiple states and on a national level are considering attempts to eliminate or restrict divorces in cases where fault cannot be proven. Right now, laws exist on or in all 50 states that allows people to end a marriage without having to prove that someone in that marriage did something wrong, like cheating or domestic abuse.
This is the co-host, Anna Kasparian, just an FYI.
Socially conservative, though, and often religious members of society have a different idea, right? So right-wing opponents of such laws are arguing that this deprives men of due process and it hurts families. In reality, oftentimes, couples that want a divorce don't want to accuse each other of terrible things. They just want to part ways and be done with it. And I don't really see how it's beneficial for society to force two individuals who no longer want to be in a marriage to continue being in a marriage, living under the same roof and being miserable with one another. But nonetheless, many of you have already heard claims from conservatives like Tim Pool, who think that it's a bad idea to allow people to have these no-fault divorces. And you're about to hear more. Let's watch.
Oh, it's gonna be
What we're
bad.
talking about in the American divorce regime is called no-fault divorce. And no-fault divorce is, one, a contradiction in terms. You can't get it. You can't break a contract if there's no fault of anyone. And two, it's horrific for children and it's horrific for the spouses.
Marriage is much more than a contract. It's a covenant. To truly go your own way, alone and isolated, is to give up on your duty, your legacy, your ancestors, your bloodline, your civilization, your happiness.
Marriage is a commitment. That commitment is lifelong. There should actually have to be a really, really, really good reason why you are divorcing. And that's particularly true if you have children,
I'm
because, of course,
telling you about
marriage
marriage
is
because I
designed
was
as
such
the
a
fundamental
cable
building block
guy.
of institutional society. It is the place where children are reared. It is the place where you produce children in the first place. And children require stability.
The traditional response to how you fix marriage is divorce is not allowed.
Okay, but
there's rare circumstances where like a guy is threatening to murder and beating his wife and his kids, and infidelity.
Blue Seal has everything you need for your pet. Largest.
Just got an ad.
One of these things.
No-Fault Divorce is an absolute tragedy.
Real
it is the
Alex
catalyst
Clark.
for every other degenerate marriage and relationship problem that we have in society.
Thanks for watching. Our audience has. She sounds like a good time. Listen. Okay, great. Go ahead and pass laws restricting divorce, and let's see how much the marriage rate drops from what it already is. It's already dropped considerably, but you're going to make it harder for people to divorce. You're going to have more people living under the same roof, having children out of wedlock, which is what conservatives don't want. Like the idea that a couple needs to prove that there's a good reason for them to divorce in order to be able to part ways is ridiculous to me. And this is coming from individuals who purport to want to protect freedom in America. But they're getting involved in literally the most intimate personal decisions that Americans can make about their personal lives. It is insane. In the case of Steven Crowder, by the way, he was bitter after it was exposed that he's pretty abusive to his wife. And yeah, she wanted to.
You must submit to me!
And by the way, I just want to make clear, in that case, I wouldn't say that it's a no-fault divorce. It seems like there's some evidence indicating that that relationship was not a good one, potentially a very abusive one. And I hope that, you know, she's able to part ways with him and not have to deal with him ever again. Unfortunately, they have children together, but it is what it is. Now, here's Senator J.D.
Oh, let's get to this cut because this is before he was announced Veep.
Talking about increasing divorce rates back in 2021.
And this is one of the great tricks that I think the sexual revolution pulled on the American populace, which is this idea that, like, well, okay, these marriages were fundamentally, you know, they were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy. And so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term. And maybe it worked out for the moms and dads, though I'm skeptical, but it really didn't work out for the kids of those marriages. And I think that's what all of us should be honest about, is we've run this experiment in real time, and what we have is a lot of very, very real family dysfunction that's making our kids unhappy.
There are a lot of myths about the divorce rate in America, and it's enraging because it just persists and no one ever really looks into it. So let's talk about what divorce in America really looks like. There was a period of time where divorces experienced a spike. So the divorce rate in the United States increased significantly from 1960, when it was 9.2 per 1,000 married women, to 22.6 in 1980. But by 2022, the rate had fallen to 14.5. Now, there's a reason for that. And it's because of the fact that, you know, people waited longer to get married. I think that has a lot to do with it. So you don't get married when you're super young and you don't even know who you are yet. I think that had something to do with it. But the reason why there was that spike in divorces is because many of those marriages were in fact violent. There was domestic abuse within those marriages. And suddenly you have a situation in which women felt empowered to leave an abusive marriage. So before 1969, when California Republican Governor Ronald Reagan approved the country's first no-fault divorce law, yeah, that Ronald Reagan, he did that, women were often forced to stay in abusive marriages. Between 1976 and 1985, states that passed the laws saw their domestic violence rates against men and women fall by about 30%. The number of women murdered by an intimate partner declined by 10%, and female suicide rates also declined by 8 to 16%. And this impacted children as well, not in a negative way, in a positive way, because they're no longer stuck in a household where they have parents engaging in domestic violence, obviously. Kimberly Well, who's a professor at the University of Baltimore School of Law, says that without such laws, meaning the ability to have a no-fault divorce, it's hard to prove anything in court relating to a family because you don't have any witnesses. It's very difficult to get evidence to show abuse of children. How do you do it? Do you put your kids on the stand? And there were also huge implications for the economic well-being of wives, many of whom stayed home and didn't make money on their own. If they could not prove that...
All right, let's go to a PBS NewsHour piece on this just last week. And again, I had to tell you a couple things because I really haven't opined much. But this is the red pill. This is the red pill. They've been talking about this for several years now, maybe more than a decade. That no-fault divorce is the reason why the family unit's falling apart, that the feminism is taking over, that, you know, that the only way for men and women to be together is that you're, you know, together forever, and the man controls you, has the passwords to your Instagram, because God forbid you talk to another guy that must be cheating, but the guy can play his scene with every other woman on the planet, because you can trust him which women he's sleeping with, but the woman, no, she's a 304. This is happening. Now we go to abortion. Now we're going to no-fault divorce. What's next? Women shouldn't vote. Women shouldn't have a credit card because you can't trust women spending because their feels over the reels. I mean, really? This is we're getting down to that path, and no one's calling out on it. The right wing, they're constant somehow.
Can get what's called a no-fault divorce. Neither side has to prove that the other did something wrong, like committing adultery, abandoning their spouse, or treating them cruelly. But some Republican lawmakers in a handful of red states want to get rid of it. They say it makes divorce too easy, and they say it's unfair to men since it's estimated that 69% of divorces in the United States are initiated by women.
Yeah, but ask you why she wanted to divorce you?
University Dedman School of Law. So, Joanna, what's the history of no-fault divorce? Where did it come from, and why did it come into being?
So California was the first state to adopt no-fault in 1969 after about 200 years of every state using fault-based divorce. And it came about because California studied it and found something that probably most people in the field already knew, which is that the system didn't work, that fault-based divorces were often involved perjury and fabrication, that people were fleeing their jurisdictions to get divorced, and that it did very little to sort out between good marriages and bad marriages.
And what's been the result? What's changed because of it?
So when no-fault was first adopted in California, it then sort of started a revolution. And within 15 years, every single state had either switched completely to a no-fault system or added at least one no-fault ground. We saw some early effects, one of which was that the system of divorce became less troubled. There were fewer cases of obvious perjury and fabrication, et cetera. There were people who got out of marriages where they had been stuck. And then we also saw some real impacts on women. The female suicide rate went down dramatically. The female homicide rate by intimate partners went down dramatically, and the rate of domestic violence went down. Those were somewhat unexpected results, but very, very clear impacts of the change.
Now, among the critics of no-fault divorce is J.D. Vance, who's Mr. Trump's new running mate. Now, here's what he had to say about this in 2021, and this video is from Vice News.
This is one of the great tricks that I think the sexual revolution pulled on the American populace, which is this idea that, like, well, okay, these marriages were fundamentally, you know, they were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy, and so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term.
Shift spouses like they change underwear. What do you say to that?
I mean, it's a pretty odd comparison since, of course, most people have at most 2 or 3 spouses in a lifetime and hopefully changing their underwear a little more often than that. But I think it really misses what no-fault divorce is. It did make it easier to get divorced, but for the most part, people were getting divorced anyway. It's just they were jumping through hoops to do it. And what we have found is that no-fault is a better fit for our society's ideas about marriage. People actually want to get divorced because they think so highly of marriage. And if the marriage is disappointing, they want to be able to get out and often go on to a new marriage. So I think it's just sort of missing the point about the relationship between divorce law and people's happiness or even the stability of marriage.
What do you make of the argument that no-fault divorce deprives men of due process because most divorces are initiated by women?
So divorces have always been initiated more often by women, going back all the way to the very first divorce laws in after the Revolution. And that's by and large because marriage is an institution that works less well for women than it does for men. The idea of a due process claim is pretty weak because what they're really saying is that a man has a right to stay married to someone over her objection. There is no recognized support in the law for that kind of a concept. So I think what they're frustrated with is this feeling that maybe women have too much autonomy and too much power, and that changing the divorce laws might be a way to pull that back. But I think there's really very little relation between the two.
Why do you think this focus from social conservatives on this now?
I think part of it is it gives some good talking points at a very abstract level, right? To suggest that the Republicans are in favor of traditional conservative values, they care about families, they care about children, and so they can use those sorts of claims about this, even though there's, as I have said, there's really not that much relationship. I also think it's part of the sort of culture wars that are, trying to bring back a more patriarchal society. I think most of the people who have advocated for repealing no-fault in the current era are really interested in having men have more control again.
What would be the effects of getting rid of
Yes,
it?
I gotta control you.
Who would be most affected? Who would be affected?
I mean, the most obvious effect would be on family courts, right, which are already backlogged and dealing with high numbers of litigants who don't have lawyers. No-fault makes divorce quicker and it makes it cheaper, in addition to what other effects it has. And so I think that in terms of individuals, the impact would be on people who, some people would be stuck in marriages as they were before the adoption of no-fault, but mostly people wouldn't be stuck. They would just have to pay more or jump through more hoops to get the divorce that they wanted. So I don't think it would have any impact on the average divorcing couple beyond cost and expense, and it would really backlog the family courts even more. The one thing we know historically is there's no relationship between how tough it is to get a divorce and whether a marriage is happy. So there's no reason to think that making divorce more difficult would somehow make marriages happier.
Joanna Grossman from SMU, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, what is with this whole patriarchal system here? We talk about this like patriarchy, all these old white men that can't see everything. It's women won't be able to vote unless she owns property, right? And or whatever. We're just going back to very animalistic, very just very one-dimensional. Women are just a doll, and you're supposed to admire and love the doll. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm just like, we gotta have a conversation on this before it's too late, because that's even the right word for that. But let's see, we have here's another thing, since we are here on the purple pill. This is called the Men's Alliance, and this one was a little bit, this is a bunch of old white dudes, Christian, cringy at the best. Tribes
Mom and I are splitting up.
Men's Alliance is tribes across the nation that meet weekly for rugged outdoor workouts and real-world devotions around.
Smell my
Christian
testosterone!
men's ministry in this country looks like. And when you're ready to challenge yourself physically and spiritually, join us at men'salliancetribe.com. Welcome to the Men's Alliance podcast.
Okay, and this is the other thing too. You know when it's a right-wing nut job, and I'll do the same thing with the left, with the rainbow flag. Do not, if you're gonna stand for the flag, it's red, white, and blue, and nothing in between. This guy's got the thin blue line, or just the black and white flag, and that just tells me right there he's an extremist. Continue.
Today's episode is one we've been talking about doing for a while. It's so important. We're talking about divorce and men. And we've got some tribesmen who are going to share their stories. And this will probably be a part 1 of 2 episodes, because it's just that important. And it's impacted so many lives, so many families of tribesmen across the country.
Tribesmen.
It's a big deal.
God.
And so I'm really looking forward to
My goodness.
discussing it today. So I'm thankful for you guys being here to share your stories.
And these dudes, basically, they don't wear headphones, but they're using SMB mics, the Shure SMB mics. So, you know, like, are they podcasting or recording video? I don't get it.
Box office, router, triple. If you guys have real names, I'll let you give those later. Those are the only ones that I'm aware of you having. So, I thought we'd start off with just some of your story, as much or as little of it as you want to share, and then we'll go around with some questions after that. But box office, I'll start with you. You're kind of
like, what is with these
leading your charge and putting this together. Share a little bit about your story and how divorce has impacted your life.
Dude,
yeah, absolutely.
Why can people not use their names? I mean, there's a problem here in society where, you know, real names or identifiable names. I had just talked about this on a stream, not a stream, in a vlog, where you know men like to hide behind a thing or an object or a symbol. They don't have a name, no traceable identities, and this is how corrupted behavior begins. Sorry, ran over.
I appreciate it. Yeah, so I think let's start from the beginning, right? You know, I just want to also emphasize that this is not a ex-wife bashing podcast by any means. This is our journey and what we've done and how we've kind of overcome things. About 2 years ago, in March, beginning of March, I remember sitting on the couch. We were about to leave to go to Great Wolf Lodge, and we were about to pick the kids up, and my now ex said, I'm leaving you. I was like, what? And so that started a pretty big, significant down spiral. Obviously, knew we had some issues beforehand, but never thought that it was as bad as we were going to get divorced, because I, hopefully like most guys, when they get married, I thought, well, I made a promise, I made a commitment. I know life isn't perfect, but I was never about to leave my wife or anything like that. So to hear those words, man, it's numbing. It's a very numbing set of words that you hear. But anyway, we'll go straight to, you know, after she told me that, basically you go into panic mode. You go into, how do I solve this? I'm a guy. How do I figure out how to fix this? So I started reading whatever I could, because obviously I must be the issue, right? It's all about me, because she's the one who's asking for this. So what do I have to fix?
I gotta fix with a torque
going straight
screw.
to my pastor, and you know, like, I need you to help me. What should I do? Our meeting was 10 minutes, and he said, I have a guy named Dave Mills I think you should meet up with. He does this thing called Men's Alliance, but he also does counseling on the side. And I was like, okay, what else? And he was like, I think you should start there. And in my head, I'm like,
what
oh
else?
my goodness, I want an answer.
I want an answer. Yeah.
So I went to another
good
pastor,
luck.
and he said, he walked around the church with me, and he said the same thing. He was like, think you should go see a counselor, get a Christian counselor and everything. I said, all right, fine.
See, yeah,
That was
this is
Goose,
the
and
Christian.
I here, and also met with somebody else. And basically, I wanted an answer. I wanted a fix-all answer, right?
Yeah, that's
no one was
that's
giving
not
me the
how
answer
life is,
I wanted this.
See, this is the
magic
problem
potion.
with men. They're always about fixing problems. I got fixings. It's like they're like Louis fucking Rossman, that whack job, or Brandon Bishop for that matter. Not a homeboy of mine. He's was a competitor in the. I looked at him as a competitor when I was doing the tech stuff. But men have this tendency of, if I just get a Torx girl, I can fix the problem. No, people, sometimes you have to let things go. And again, it's always like, it's like the cure for, oh, this person's got cancer. I can logically think about how to fix it, like Jimmy Crickets, people. You wonder why men are mocked by, and why I hate my own gender. All right, let's just fast forward. This is hour 30.
Your kid, that just reveals all the weaknesses in your marriage from that standpoint. So from that standpoint, honestly, it sucked. But I am somewhat grateful for my wife that she had the courage to say that instead of just going through the marriage. Because I don't think I would be who I am now if I hadn't gone through that.
This is kind of like the man enough for the right
And then,
wingers.
after that, after we separated, my middle child, he also had the same genetic defect. We buried him about 1.5 years ago, and it was interesting as I reflect how I handled losing my youngest child versus my middle son, and it was completely 180 of a difference.
Whoa, let's re-cue that part. He lost a kid. What's going on in Appalachia? I'm assuming you're Appalachia by the accent. Let's re-cue from here.
Have and ages?
I have 3 daughters, 9, 11, and 13.
Okay.
And I got 2. They're now 12 and 10. And I just want to say that what's funny is not funny. I hate that term.
Yeah.
Really, well, that's not funny. But anyway, is that I didn't drink because my wife left me. I drank because I didn't have the kids with me. That's why. Because I was like, man, I don't get to see my kids anymore. That was really hard too. So I agree with you there.
Thank you for sharing that. Tell us your story, Triple.
So I'll start in the beginning, like box office. So it was a cold, wet day in 1981. Just kidding. No, I actually remember when my ex-wife dropped the divorce bomb on me. I mean, vividly. We were swimming in the pool. Like, I think I can, remember very acute details of kind of what we were doing that day. And it just threw me for a whirlwind. I was like the sail just went out. Or the wind went out of my sail. And she said, I need a break. I was like, what does that mean? What is that? And, come to find out as things progressed, and this is September of 2021, so just after COVID.
Someone's calling me on the air right now. Sorry about that. I thought I had Do Not Disturb enabled.
Starting to kind of venture back and everything. And, I think if you step back a little bit more, my story might be a little bit different, but the nuances of kind of what led to the divorce probably very similar to a lot of cases from that standpoint. But about 4 years previous, we had buried my youngest son through a genetic disorder. He passed away from that, and the trauma that we're dealing with that, I don't think neither one of us really got the help that we should have. And I think there's lingering effects of the grief and everything tied into everything else. I think when you look back, or when I started doing the work, because when that bomb hit me, it was almost like a wake-up call. I accepted Jesus as my Savior in 2006, or just before 2006, and I thought I was a Christian then. I thought I was a born-again believer. Now looking back on it, I think I made the decision that there is a God in Jesus, but he wasn't my God. I hadn't surrendered everything over to him. And I think as I look back in the 15
From
years
the
of
group
that
of
marriage,
personal,
there was many things that I failed
from
at.
the group of personal
That standpoint.
responsibility, surrender
Whether it was
responsibility.
looking at things I shouldn't be looking
These
at,
group of
and
men
that
are
perverted my mindset of what a marriage really needs to be, what the role of the husband needs to be, how to lead my kids from that standpoint. And when you throw in, when you're not doing any of that stuff, and you throw in a trauma like losing your kid, that just reveals all the weaknesses.
Doing is weird or nuts.
My commander would always say when people would, at the end of deployments, when people would come back home, he would always say, do not buy anything, marry anything, sell anything, or divorce anything for 90 days.
90
You need to
days?
reacclimate.
That's too good.
I would do more like a year.
All right, so what's something else that you guys were
Oy.
surprised to feel or learn?
So at that same Men's Alliance dinner, I heard someone say in life you should have God first, spouse second, or significant other second, and kids third. I'd never heard that before that night, and I had those completely backwards.
Really?
Kids got all my love.
Just on one little other thing, we're gonna just switch gears here on the purple pill, since we kind of talk about what are the red pill terminology, which I'll be coming up with. It's kind of last minute, but I just wanted to play this clip from Fox 11 KTTV in Los Angeles. They were interviewing this guy on modern masculinity. I'll play it. But there's this interviewer.
$10 can help fund powerful
like
ads.
an AI. It's just really weird. Let's cut that out.
Go inside. Everything you want is inside of you. You got to figure this out.
You discuss toxic masculinity and its impact on not only men, but families and society. How do you define toxic masculinity?
Toxic masculinity is the absence of masculinity. It sounds redundant, but it's the absence of self-acceptance and humility and empathy. Just those two pieces alone. You cannot be self-centered, abusive, exploitive, because you're doing it to yourself, and you're not going to do it to yourself. Toxic is it's destructive. Now, there's narcissistic masculinity, which is kind of like on this getting toward toxic, but toxic is a lack of personal development in the role, whether it be position, power, or relationship, where a man has not discovered or done the work on himself, and he's acting it out externally, not internally. And that's part of what we take head on in the book. You can choose. You may be toxic. You can choose not to be. All through the book, it's never too late to change. Or, the other saying, it's never too early to change. But toxic is the absence of compassionate, high-functioning masculinity. It's a complete absence of it.
Exactly.
Why are men so angry and aggressive?
That's got to be an AI.
Many times when a man is angry and aggressive, that's a secondary emotion. They're feeling powerless. And I always wonder, what's underneath? What's that covering up? What deep, deep disappointment or trauma is getting covered up with mud? People talk about anger management. I call it shame management. Because aggression is secondary. That's a result of not feeling good about yourself or feeling unloved, abused. There's something driving, fueling that. Something's funding that abuse. And men, unfortunately, externalize their rage, where women internalize it. They'll internalize and blame themselves. And I always say, how many mass murderers are women? Exactly. Can't name one. But we can name a lot of men because they take their rage out on the world as a way of trying to heal this. And the problem is, it's the Grand Canyon. It just keeps getting bigger. Where ultimately it leads to self-destruction and suicide or homicide. It's very unfortunate. But that's where the aggression goes if it's not checked.
Emotional intelligence is key to your understanding of what a healthy masculinity looks like. How did men become emotionally unintelligent, and how can they address this?
Well, AI is
That's such a
asking
hard
the
question because men emotionally unintelligent. It's true, illiterate, emotionally illiterate, and what it is. But since the Industrial Revolution, there's been this migration from the farm into the city, and you're judged. Men are the worst with men, by the way. It's not women, men. The Brotherhood are brutal. Male humor is treacherous. You know, the emotional intelligence it's not a luxury item. Men view it as a luxury item, and they're like in handcuffs. You're either silent or you're enraged. Everything else in between, if you express that you're weak, you're not man enough. Man up. Men don't cry. Men don't feel it. Well, that's the reason why 900 men today will die from a heart attack, not related to health, because your emotions have to go somewhere, and over time, it's going to cannibalize you. Emotional intelligence is the ability to connect to yourself, to know what's going on in here. And I'll ask, man, what are you thinking? I don't know. Yes, you do. Let's take a moment. And it's so uncomfortable, but you learn to sit with it. Your emotional IQ increases. And that's what your partner wants, because it breeds compassion and empathy for yourself and others. But it's been viewed as a luxury item, not as a masculine item. And that's what's changing. Men are realizing that. Men go to therapy for that reason. Men go to the gym. It's all the same. Having a coach, it's all related.
Throughout modern masculinity.
The other thing, too, I think we need to teach our little boys is nuance, multi-dimensions. We're more than just a screen. You know, when you're watching this feed right now, you're seeing a multi-dimension. You're seeing me in different shades, different. We're not teaching boys this, and again, I blame this on fathers too, emotionally unavailable fathers. Again, I come from a Gen X parents with silent generation. There was a time when no one would talk about their emotions, and our kids were to only be seen and not heard. I think it's messed up a lot of the younger people, younger than the boomers. And again, I have some sympathy, but I don't feel the entire empathy for these groups of people. Alright, so that's kind of a sample of the politics, the emotional stuff. And just the other thing I want to close up on, maybe we'll bring it back on the weekly zoo at some point whenever we meet again. Was I was at the day after 4th of July, we went to a diner in Derry. I won't name the name, but there was a waitress that was kind of cute, but I wasn't really like engaged with her personally. But I found it really disrespectful, and I'm gonna call her the sexist server. And she did not engage eye contact with me. She didn't want to look at me, but I had two female companions, my mom and my great aunt. She engaged with them just fine. To say that there is not reverse sexism in the 603 is highly naive. And I'm really disgusted in the state. And again, I literally want to get out of New Hampshire because I just think the state is just disgusting. It's people that just think that they're entitled, that they can, disrespect people's, not even respect their presence. Okay, that server came to our table at least 6 instances during that time, maybe less than that. But she just didn't want to look at me. Maybe I was cute. Maybe, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt. But I find it highly sexist. And, and stuff like that. And again, this podcast, and just want to wrap up the weekly zoo as a whole today. This show is not for the faint of heart. We are very raunchy. Again, like I said in the earlier parts, where we don't go personal. We do a lot of counter speech. We try to evade against evading against the the counter narratives and try to like throw some empathy and compassion, like we talked about earlier on the purple pill here. But again, I am not. I will not tolerate this level of being fear of being canceled and people getting so offended. Okay, if you want to hear some wholesome family stuff, listen to Yellow Marga. You're not going to be listening to me on a podcast. Okay, and but there's so many issues going on here today. But we should be back at some point. I will be negotiating my terms with the 312 media people, see if we can continue to operate here with a budget here. You have to spend time to be in the studio, to be all this billing and all this logistical stuff. So, alrighty, thank you for listening and watching. We'll see you in another episode here. This is the end of episode 4 of the Purple Pill. Till next time, I'm hoping it's episode 4, but I don't like doing episodes. Till next time, have a good one. Bye bye.